In this video, we discuss the 5 big things that people care most about in retirement. Coming up next on Holy Schmidt.
Holy Schmidt!
Trying to figure out what retirees care about most in retirement is a lot like trying to figure out someone's favorite ride at Disneyland. Most people like Space Mountain, but some like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. One only need to look at what a retiree says and does to know that this is true. What you might think is important isn't necessarily what the average retiree thinks is important. For example, some retirees actually hate travel, yet this is the stereotype of the average retiree. Constantly traveling, looking for the best discounts on flights, hotels, and restaurants, but travel isn't even on the list here today. Believe it or not, many retirees don't live to travel. Do they like it? Yes. But do they love it? Not really. This video discusses what retirees like overall as a group, and in watching this video, maybe it will help you uncover a few things that you didn't think about that you might actually like to do more. In other words, we'll help you find your Space Mountain. All right, let's get going, but before we do, please make sure you click the like button down below because YouTube uses the number of likes to lift a video in its algorithm, and I want to help as many people as possible. Number 1, we just need to get this out of the way. It should come as no surprise that financial security tops the list. The reason is, as you get older, the less likely you are to be able to work, if you had to go back to work, of course. Financial security comes in the form of revenue, income, of course, but the almost never talked about category of expense management is also equally as important. Here's a funny joke. What do you call somebody with $1 million of investments and $1,001 of debt? The answer is bankrupt. No matter how people think about their lives, they need to know more than just the headline numbers in order to succeed. Revenue is great, assets are great, but low expenses are even better, and low debt is even better. If you cut your expenses to what I call needs-based versus waste-based, you will have an avalanche of cash flow. What do I mean? Well, your heating bill is needs-based. Your credit card minimum payment is waste-based. John D. Rockefeller, the world's first billionaire, gave each one of his children 25 cents a week as an allowance. Anything beyond that they had to earn. They raised vegetables and rabbits, were required to give 10% to charity, save 10%, and account for the rest. Harsh, I know, I couldn't do it, but it does shine a big light on the fast money of 2024 compared to the old money of 1924. Today, we're taught what I call fast food money rules. They feel good when you are learning them, but they're really bad for you. I don't know about you, but I can't tell you how many times I've gone online and watched a pitchman pitch me a fast money idea that defies common sense. But it sounds great when he or she is pitching it. It's actually quite sinister because that same person trashes get-rich-quick ideas and then proceeds to pitch you a get-rich-quick idea, calling it a get-rich-slowly idea that can get done in a very quick period of time. The fact is, Rockefeller was right then and he's right today. Account for every dollar and you will get a lot more out of your money. The next one is time with family. This one's actually underrated, but is probably the single most important item on this list. Let me explain. We as human beings have a love-hate relationship with people and often with ourselves. We expect them to act and think just like us. Yet in the cold light of day, as we get older, we realize we have flaws too. That argument you had with your son or daughter looks a lot different today than it did 20 years ago, particularly when the world itself has moved on. And both of you have a different view of the world. Your neighbor who used to get really angry when you had your weekend pool parties and the loud music that went with it might not have been such a snob after all. And your relationship with money, the things that you said no to back then, you might actually say yes to today because you have a bit more of it. You get the point. Next is our health, and more importantly, our health span, in the words of Dr. Attia, because it's not just that you have time above ground, but it's what you do with that time, how much you enjoy it. The goal of most retirees in this area, by the way, is to do the things that they did in the past. Walk, run, lift heavy objects, and balance correctly, as a minimum. Your health span also relates to your ability to think clearly, focus for long periods of time, and just be in the moment. To be clear. This, by the way, is why many retirees have an exercise program in retirement, even if they never exercised during their working years, because exercise is known to fix a lot of issues, including mental clarity. Next is self-discovery. Who you are today is a product of nature and nurture, with nurture taking a commanding force in your overall outcome. You can see this on numerous documentaries about identical twins that were separated at birth. One grows up to be a PhD, a scholar. The other grows up to be a factory worker. Nurture, by the way, is too polite a term for it most of the time. It goes by other terms like the daily grind, the 9 to 5, obligations, or stress, among others. But what happens when we remove the grit of our daily lives? Well, for most people, they start to revert back to the person they were meant to be, not the person they needed to be. Different than when they were teenagers, of course, and they looked at the world with the eyes of possibility, but not so different that they couldn't recapture a lot of what they were back then. Next is relationship with our partner. Rekindling that relationship from the past is not as hard as you think it is if you think about the currents that are driving you apart from one another. Let's put a stake in the ground on this and look at it in extreme. Let's look at the average Hollywood affair. When the affair happens, the cheater almost always has regret at the end. Arnold Schwarzenegger has regret that he is no longer with Maria. Tiger Woods has regret that he's no longer with Ellen. Hugh Grant has regret that he's no longer with Elizabeth. The outcome is predictable. They wish they hadn't done it, and there's often no coming back from it. But let's assume that that extreme is not what we're talking about here. Let's assume that you're well-intentioned and your partner's well-intentioned, but you have different views. Things escalated probably because of stress, and if you actually had the ability to sit down and work it through, both of you would come to the conclusion that neither was right and neither was wrong. Retirement is a time to bring your relationship back in line. Many of those differences are now behind you, and you share the common goal of making the future better together. You'll notice in here that nowhere is stuff. That antique vase, the perfect art collection, or the classic Corvette just aren't that important to most people. They are, metaphorically, Mr. Toad's wild ride, not Magic Mountain for the average retiree. Gang, in the next 6 months, world events are going to affect this community significantly. And I'm going to do my best to bring what's happening out there in here in a very concise and objective way so that you understand what's going on. So make sure you click subscribe and turn on notifications so that you get alerted the next time I post a video. Especially now, I post once or twice a week. If you like this video, check out that video on things you need to leave behind in retirement. This is Jeff Schmidt. Thanks for watching.